She was pregnant at the time, and she was sitting there like dissecting a pregnant mouse. And then she just had a moment where she just dropped everything and walked away. And she's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Welcome to the Hen Report. This is Jasmin Singer.
This is Mariann Sullivan.
And we have a very special guest for our Hen Report today. I will get to that fabulous intro in a fabulous second. But before I do, just a quick reminder that the Our Hen House podcasts are sprinkled throughout your week like delicious brown sugar on your coffee, which I'm probably saying because I'm currently drinking a mediocre cup of coffee that does have brown sugar Trader Joe's oat milk creamer in it. I should just sprinkle it with some brown sugar. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, the Hen Report on Thursdays, and the long form interview on Fridays. Bonus content for Flock members comes out on Mondays. As you probably know by now, we're a podcast and we're on YouTube. So hit subscribe, hit like, comment wherever you listen. So speaking of Flock members, I would like to welcome a Flock member to our Hen House today. Flock member Neha Nataraj is here to tell us about a recent conference she attended. Welcome to our Hen House. Welcome to the Hen Report, Neha.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited. We had also a chance to have a meal with you recently as you were traveling with your family through Rochester. And so we got to introduce you to the red fern. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was delicious. And I love the dessert too. That was a disaster, cutting and sharing.
Oh no, it's true that you don't have a future in dessert cutting, but I will contextualize why that doesn't matter, because you already have quite a bustling career and don't need to worry about whether or not to cut pie as a living. Neha is a postdoctoral researcher at the Perelman School of Medicine. Did I say that right? Perelman?
Yeah.
Okay. At the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. And when we found out that she was attending the Summer Immersion program sponsored by PCRM and Johns Hopkins, we wanted to hear more about it, particularly because she has promised to dumb it down enough so that we can understand it. So I know that we foisted this opportunity at you when we were like mid-dessert or something. And so I hope you don't feel like you had to say yes, but I just want you to know I'm very excited that you did, regardless of whether you felt bullied into it.
Yeah, I really felt bullied. No, I'm just kidding. I was very honored to be asked. I kind of stared at you for a second before I said yes.
Well, I'm very excited because I know that there's a lot going on in this particular field. So before we get into it, what is the Summer Immersion program and what was this year's goal?
Yeah, so the Summer Immersion program is co-hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Alternatives to Animal Testing, or CAT, as they call it, which is housed in the School of Public Health, and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which I think we've talked about on the podcast before, which is this great organization that promotes, plant-based nutrition as well as, veganism in general, advocates for that. And so they co-hosted their fourth biennial Summer Immersion on innovative approaches in science. So it's basically a free 4-day conference in Baltimore. They hosted at Johns Hopkins. And the event is designed to educate scientists on non-animal methods for animal testing, as well as biomedical research to advance humane science. And then also to provide networking opportunities within the field, learning new techniques, workshops. And so, I heard about this opportunity and I was like, I gotta go and experience it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so exciting that you're here because I'm always hearing about conferences and that sound interesting. But this one would, you end up not traveling and then you don't know what happened to them. So it's great to have somebody tell you, especially when it's about topics that you probably wouldn't understand when you were there. So you mentioned that it's free. Is it by invitation? Who's there? Is it, you're a scientist. Is it mostly other scientists? Is it students? What is the crowd made up of?
Yeah, the reason it's free is because they want to make it completely accessible to all people, regardless of their background and training. And they also offer travel grants, which means there were people from all over the world there, which was really cool. So if you're willing to present a poster on your science, they were offering travel grants. There were people from Taiwan and Poland and like all over from yeah. It was really like nice to see so many different people interested in this field. I'm an undergrad there. Although to be fair, I don't know if there are that many undergrads, but she was interested in science and she was local, so she came. But there are graduate students, postdocs, early career professors, the whole range. And there was academic, government, and industry presence as well in terms of like sponsors and speakers.
That is so cool. I think it's so inspiring that they make it free, and also what you just said about the travel grants, because as I think we discussed at dinner that time, and I think we've discussed on the podcast, the price of some of these conferences really makes it so that a lot of especially younger people cannot attend. And I also understand why there's a cost at conferences, but it's just I'm a very long time fan of PCRM. I think that the work they do is truly groundbreaking. And I think that even though they do get a lot of credit for the work that they do, I think there is so much that they do that they don't get credit for. And I am just so thrilled that they put on this conference. So what is a NAM? Like you just kind of said it, but I had assumed when I saw the acronym that it stood for non-animal method, but what did you just say? What is it?
So I think depending on who you ask, you'll get like different answers. But I think like the technical like expansion of NAM is new approach methodologies or novel approach methodologies, but also non-animal methods.
Oh, that's so tricky.
Yeah.
You can give whatever name you want. All right, so let's get into some of the content. I know it's kind of a big question, but can you just kind of give us an overview on where the science is on removing animals from the mix, some of the most promising new technologies, what areas of animal use are really moving forward, and maybe what areas aren't?
Yes. Okay. So listeners for this podcast probably know from previous episodes on this topic, but broadly, animal use in science falls into 3 categories. One is like education, like training, medical and veterinary training, schools, dissections, that kind of thing. The second is biomedical research, which is both basic and translational studies aimed at understanding both fundamental biology and mechanisms, as well as to develop treatments for human diseases. And the third category is like animal testing and toxicology, like testing drugs in animal models, drug doses and the toxicology. And so the focus of this conference was to address the reduction and replacement of animal use in biomedical research and toxicology. And so they had like a number of talks, panels, and workshops where they, covered the ethics, techniques, and new and developing methodology, as well as developing a community around that. And so when it comes to NAMs or new approach methodologies, they're like broadly like 3 different, types of assays that fall within NAMs. So the first is in vitro assays. And so in vitro basically means like in a petri dish, a cell culture, which could be, by the way, also from animals. You can take animal cells and culture them in a dish. You can take human cells and culture them in a dish. And so traditionally, you do these 2-dimensional cultures where you just grow them in a flat layer in a dish, and then you can do experiments on them. But new technology now allows us to do 3-dimensional cultures as well to develop kind of like mini organs called organoids. And so you can grow human cell-derived 3-dimensional organ-like structures, and then we can see maybe some different, outcomes than you would see in a 2-dimensional, plane, because this mimics more of what would happen, inside the human physiology. And so this kind of organoid cultures usually involves co-culturing with multiple different cell types. And I think also importantly, I need to address that, huge technological innovation is stem cell derived cultures. And so obviously there's a lot of ethical concerns around embryonic stem cell use. I'm sure that, people have talked about that in like pop culture. But what we can do is something called induced pluripotent stem cells, which we can take like, something like a skin cell and reprogram it to become a stem cell and then turn that into almost any cell of our choice.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, there are obviously always drawbacks depending on what model system you're using. But having these stem cell derived cultures has enabled a lot of very exciting, human-based science to happen. And so using those stem cells, we can also make these 3-dimensional organoids. And then there's this, organ on chip, which is more, novel, of connecting organs to some sort of microfluidic system, and then there's multiple organ on chip, so you make a mini lung and a mini heart, and you connect them in on a chip, and basically combining a lot of biomedical engineering with some of this innovative techniques. And so this is in vitro assays, so that was the first category of NAMs. And then there's also something called in chemico assays, which I didn't really know anything about going in, but I think it's more relevant to toxicology. And so basically it's a way where you can do molecular analysis of chemicals and their interaction with biological molecules. So testing a drug and see what it does to DNA, testing a drug, seeing what it does to different types of proteins. So that's another kind of, NAM.
When you talk about toxicology, does that cover, did this conference cover, and does this generally cover both the whole question of drug testing, or does it also cover product testing, or is that a whole different field?
Product testing, I don't know.
Makeup or the
cosmetic.
Yeah, cosmetics or cleaning, all the things that they have tested on animals, and there seems to be progress there, but it's certainly not complete. So this conference is mostly talking about drug testing.
Yeah, it was pretty focused on biomedical and broadly the biomedical field. And so that what falls into that is mostly toxicology and biomedical research. So yeah.
I get it.
But I wouldn't say I don't see why it wouldn't be applicable to other fields. Yeah. And so the third subcategory within NAMs is in silico models, which basically means computer modeling and simulation, and systems biology, machine learning, and now there's a huge component of AI, and basically together with all of these different assays and approaches, you can model complex human biology in a way that you can't quite do with animal modeling. Although you would get an argument back from a lot of scientists that these NAMs complement animal research as well. And so together we can kind of get a bigger picture of what's happening in humans.
So which of these alternatives seemed closest to widespread adoption, would you say?
So, okay, that's a great question. I would say I think that in combination, we can start replacing different things. One of the speakers at the conference was this person at the NIH named Warren Casey. And so he's the executive director of something called ICVAM, which is an interagency coordinating committee on the validation of alternative methods. And actually, the day he spoke, he had just been appointed the director of a brand new office that was formed within ICVAM called ORIVA, which is the Office of Research, Innovation, Validation, and Application. So it was brand new. So he came on the stage, said, "Oh, listen, my title has changed because guess what?" And he goes to the next slide, and then he's like, "This brand new office was just announced today."
Wow.
And everyone was like, "Yay!"
Wow.
Yeah. So I can talk a little bit more about that, but he did mention that this office called ORIVA, there's two broad goals in terms of the reduction and replacement of animals in research, and so when it comes to preclinical testing, drug testing and all of that, their goal is to eventually entirely replace animals in that system. But when it comes to biomedical research, their goal is to lessen the emphasis on animals and to provide alternatives, but they don't think that replacement really work in that, in that field in biomedical research. And so I think when it comes to, are we actually going to see this like start changing in the field? I think the methods are at a stage where they are going to be able to supersede, animal testing. And there's already a lot of data showing that NAMs work, our current, this current NAMs technology that we have seems to, perform better than animal models in preclinical testing. But in biomedical research, unfortunately, our, NAMs don't quite meet the mark in terms of effectively being able to replace, animals in research.
Can I just dig a little deeper into that? This is a little striking to me. And the fact that you're saying that one of the takeaways is that it's not fully replaceable in biomedical research. So do you think that the experts at the conference were largely aligned on that point, or was there disagreement about how far replacement can ultimately go?
What do you mean when it comes to biomedical research?
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah. They didn't have a lot of discussion around that topic. I have to say it's a little bit of a hot button topic in biomedical research.
Okay.
Majority of people are adamant that as technology stands today, we cannot just remove animals from research. Like it's going to cause huge, harmful effects in our understanding of medicine. And so, right now there's a lot of changes happening at the federal level to promote, moving away from animals and promote human-focused research and science. But there is a great deal of fear that this is the first step to diminish scientific research, because animal research is framed as being vital to study a lot of diseases and scientific questions.
It's interesting. I guess at this point, it's really hard to know what the future is. And it is worrisome that if they don't have a vision of the future, if if the most of the people doing it don't have a vision that this would be a goal, even if it's far off, even if, we don't have the science yet, that they'll never get there. And I think that's for a long time. I mean, from the outside, I always have a perception that they're very wedded to the use of animals. And, there's a whole lot of reasons that go into that. And one of them may be because it's absolutely the best science, but there might be other reasons as well. So it would be nice to hear that there was a goal.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. If complete replacement isn't realistic, what does success look like? Is it a 10% reduction, a 50% reduction, something else? I'm just curious about your thoughts, Neha.
Yeah, I am happy to share my thoughts. In my personal opinion, when it comes to biomedical research and having been in basic science for a really long time, I would say that for a lot of people, in the science they study, at this current moment, it's just not possible. If they want to continue studying these questions, right, it's just not possible to suddenly switch to a completely new technique, and a technique that hasn't even been perfected, right? I would argue, though, I think it's really important to note that there, from this conference, there are these really exciting new technologies that I got to learn about. It's cutting edge, really pushing, the NAM field forward into, next gen NAMs. And that's excelling above non-human models in many ways. And I think, scientists are so smart. Scientists are so smart and dedicated and curious. And I think if we invest in it, both in terms of money, but also in terms of brain power, I think we will establish better and better technology, and the more likely it'll be that we'll be able to replace animals in research. I think that there is, my background is in basic science, which is we justify our work to the NIH to get funding as like being relevant to human health. But I have to tell you, to be honest, a lot of the people who do basic science just do it because they're passionate about basic science, about understanding basic fundamental mechanisms. And like, yeah, we hope that it'll help human health. And a lot of like huge important discoveries happened because people were studying very like specific detailed mechanisms. And a lot of that also was done in animals, right? But I think that there's this notion that we study science for the sake of science as well, which is also, I think, the founding principle for the NSF, studying science for the sake of science and knowledge and understanding. And I think because animals are used as a critical tool to understand science, there's a reluctance to, let that go because, you found a really interesting thing that happens in mice. Like you build an entire research program, your entire lab is built around understanding this thing that happens in mice. Is it going to translate to humans? Yeah, it might, but it might not also. But
it's still interesting.
It's still interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you handle this in your own career? Because you're doing this kind of science that is very frequently rooted in animal research.
Yeah, I mean, I have been really fortunate. I mean, it was intentional, right? I have avoided using animals in research, at least using animal models in my research for pretty much my whole career. And that was intentional. Like I said, I mean, I've only been vegan for 3 years, but I've been vegetarian my whole life, and I never wanted to do experiments on animals, or have to kill animals for it. But I've been fortunate also that, people have respected my opinion. They're like, I like that you stick to your ethics and you don't use animals. Like, people have told me that. And I've had professors support me in that as well and help me find a project that's, human specific.
That's good.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm surrounded by people who do study animals. I read papers all the time that use a lot of animal models. I've read really cool science that revolves around animals, right? And yeah, it's definitely like hard to be in that place where you're like interested in the science, but you also like have this, ethical stance about the way we use animals and that they're not ours to use. And then I also want to point out that, even within the NAMS field, a lot of these technologies still use animal products. So, whether it's in the media that you add or something you coat or some antibodies you use to stain, a lot of that is derived from animals. And they're not, harmless. A lot of this stuff is derived from animals in a very painful and horrific way, like fetal bovine serum or Matrigel. And so it's also hard because, I've focused my work on, not using animal models, but I still like use animal products when I'm doing my experiments and cultures. And I try to find replacements, but there just aren't, like, for everything. They just aren't. And in fact, there was a really cool talk during the conference from a professor, I think in Germany. And a huge part of his lab, like that's what they're doing. They're trying to find like replacements for a lot of commonly used animal products in NAMS. And so, he has like, I think 3 papers on like establishing different things that, work robustly. And that means he's using animal products to compare against, right? So it's about establishing like that baseline to see how does it compete with existing like, reagents. And so I thought that's like really important work. I think it would be great if more people could do that, to kind of establish alternatives, xeno-free alternatives as they're called.
So what was the atmosphere at the conference? Where like did you feel like, oh my God, I finally found my people? Was everybody excited and hopeful? Like, what do scientists talk about at the cocktail party? Did they talk about formulas and stuff?
No, they didn't talk about formulas. There was, like I said, there was like pretty broad range of people there. So when I first got there, everyone was really friendly and talking, but I quickly realized that like a lot of the people who were there were just there for the toxicology stuff. Like, oh, this is cutting edge, like new toxicology, and it was a free conference, so they came. And so, there was definitely a group of attendees who were there, like, just for that. And then I think there was a solid group of like vegans or people who didn't want to, wanted to start working towards a world where we don't use animals in research, which, I found a couple of them. And then, yeah, I think that probably describes it. And I got friendly with a post-bac who wants to, post-bac is like someone who's graduated college and is working, kind of to build up their research so they can then apply to grad school. And she wants to do a dual degree of like a vet degree, like a VMD or DVM. And then a PhD, which is a pretty rare dual degree program. That's not like, there aren't that many programs in the country, but, she's vegetarian, wants to be vegan, and she has been doing a project where she uses a lot of mice, and, she's not happy with it. And that's why she was there, because she was interested in this field. And she was talking about how as soon as like her professor heard that she wanted to do, a vet degree, he was like, great, you can do more animal projects. And she was like, no, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
But she was kind of like shocked at how, like, she thought that, in the vet world, like, people would like animals. And I know you guys have talked a lot about this too, about how the vet field is kind of like strange in that way, where you're trained to care for animals, but care for animals that we then consume or use and exploit. Yeah. So,
yeah, that sounds crazy.
Yeah. So I've mentioned, I know you know this, and we have mentioned it on the podcast before, but I just want to reiterate that my wife works in human research protection, and so she works for a major university, and a lot of the times the IRBs, which is what she's sort of working with, are, and that's internalized institutional review board. Is that what IRB stands for? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it's the I that always confuses me. I'm always like, national institutionalized internal. Okay. And a lot of times within universities, the IRB system is both human research and animal research together. So she wound up, as a vegan of 30 something years, specifically going out of her way to find a university big enough that the two IRBs are separate, the human research and the animal research. So it is, I'm sort of fascinated by any field where people have to kind of jump through a few hoops to like sidestep animal exploitation. I don't, going back to your vet thing, I know that in vet school, it's kind of like testing on animals is kind of like part of what you're doing. Anyway, I'm digressing, but the point is that there are probably a lot of hopeful things that people could get from a conference like this. So for someone who cares about animals but doesn't necessarily follow biomedical research closely, what would you say, like, what development from this conference should give them the most hope?
To me, what gives me the most hope, I would say, is the changes we're seeing at the federal level, because I think if we're investing the kind of money that they're investing in promoting NAMs, I think we're going to start seeing some shifts. Because I think that's what it all boils down to. I think we have a lot of great technology, and I think we just need to invest more to develop it further. I think the way academia is structured makes it really difficult for these changes to happen quickly, because basically how it looks for biomedical research is like a ton of little mini baby companies within a university, right? So like each PI, or principal investigator, which is basically like a professor who runs a lab, they have their own lab space and their own office. They have to recruit all the people who work there, including grad students, postdocs, other employees. And then they have to secure funding, whether that's public or private or both. And then they start this research program based on, a couple of fundamental questions. And everybody will do that based on their own training. So if you have an entire cohort across the country or across the globe of people who are trained to use a particular model system to study a particular question and are expanding within those fields, it's really hard to get them to be like, okay, throw out all of that training, learn this new technology and do it now, right? Like it's just like really like not feasible to do that to each lab in each university across the world. And so I think, unfortunately, like with many things, change is going to have to be incremental and slow. I think the key is going to be to, have more training and workshops and access to some of these new technologies, including, like having core facilities at universities who will like educate and have resources for people to use. And then from that, right, and then to incentivize people to learn it and develop it and use it, implement it in their labs using, with these funding resources coming from the NIH or other public agencies. And then you have a new generation of people with new training and new interests who can then push, be like, oh, my background is studying this disease in, mice, but now I'm going to study it in this different model system because I did my grad school studying mice, and then I did my postdoc learning this new technique, and now I'm going to start a research program studying this question in using a human relevant model. So I think this change is just going to be slow, but I think it's really exciting what's happening at the federal level. I know there's a lot of like fear and pushback from biomedical researchers, especially about this and I think it's true. I think there's a lot of concerning things happening at the federal level, obviously, but specific to science. It's a little scary what's happening right now. Actually, we're facing a pretty significant challenge. There's like a new proposed federal funding changes that are happening from the Federal Office of Management and Budget, the new rules on how funding is going to be regulated, which would be like catastrophic to our ability to perform research. And right now they're like open to comment. And so there's like, they're trying to galvanize scientists to comment. It would honestly be like really devastating to scientific research in this country. So I think also navigating this in like a pretty complex political landscape. I know Mariann often says like, strange bedfellows, and it does really feel like that. I think we have to be really wary because, I just think it's scary because we don't know if this is, again, like some people are worried that this is the first step to completely get rid of like, good science. And so I think it's important to highlight that this is good science, this is innovative, and, we should pour money into this, incentivize people to study it and use it and implement it, and advance it.
Yeah, I really hope that the current crisis resolves in a way that there is funding for research, but that this moment in time where the federal government has, like, in some ways been more sympathetic, whether for good reasons or bad, to getting animals out of the out of some areas of research, means that more people like you will be coming in, will be getting jobs. Because I think that having people like you in there has been very rare, and at least from what the people in the vet schools say, like, you just don't get into vet school if you mention that you don't want to do research on animals. So it kind of, I would imagine some of the same kind of things go on in science. So the people are never there to be making these arguments. So the fact that this conference is going on, the fact that the federal government, for whatever reason, is showing a lot more sympathy than it ever has before, I think all of these are really important. And another thing that I noticed was that Maddie Krasno was one of the speakers, and the work that she's doing. I feel like maybe it's just because I'm in my bubble, but I feel like there's more attention to the fact that this work can be traumatic for a lot of people. It should be traumatic for people, and I don't think that's ever been recognized before. Was that at all a topic of discussion, or was that the talk that only your people went to?
No, I thought they did a really good job. The organizers did I know it was co-hosted by the Johns Hopkins CAT and PCRM, but the feeling I got is that PCRM did like the, heavy lifting in terms of organizing it. And I think they did a really good job in terms of like the order of things, because they started off with Kathy Hessler, actually. Or actually, I should say the first talk was from the head of CAT, who spoke kind of broadly about NAMs. But then, the second talk of the whole conference was by Kathy Hessler, who was, by the way, on our hen house like a really long time ago. I looked it up, like 2012.
No, we've known Kathy for a very long time.
I thought she was just awesome. I would have loved like a longer talk from her. But like,
and she's on the legal side, so
Yeah.
that means that they were talking a lot about the, or at least to some extent, about the legal side.
Yeah, and so like
how it's regulated.
Exactly. So she gave a broad framework about the legal protections or non-protections for lab animals, but then also like ethical considerations, both at the federal level as well as state level. And then I thought that would be really great for like I told you, like some of the people there, or a good deal of the people there, were not there for the animals. They were there for innovative science. And so I think exposing people to that was really
great.
I was just sitting there being like, yes, all these people are learning about how the field abuses animals. And then we got, like I said, like the NIH, some people from the NIH talking about this new agency, how they're collaborating with the FDA to move away from animals. And then they kind of, I guess they really like interspersed the different types of talks. There were workshops. And then on the second day, the first thing that they did was have this really great panel with Maddie Krasno, as well as Mallory. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry, Mallory. Mallory Cormier, I think, from Save the Buns, where she basically, she's head of this organization where they are able to recruit and rehome rabbits that were used in laboratories. And then also the third person on that panel was someone named Madhu Nag. She's the chief scientific officer of a company called Inspiro, but she's had a pretty long career where, she started out, she told the story where she was pregnant at the time, and she was working on a mouse model, like of mouse pregnancy, and she was sitting there like dissecting a pregnant mouse, and then she just had a moment where she just dropped everything and walked away, and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. And she was mid dissection, and she's like, I can't do this. And she really dedicated the rest of her career to, like, wherever she went, to promoting moving away from animal models and using human-based systems, including she was at the NIH, she was at the FDA, apparently for pediatric drug development, because at the early like clinical trials, it's like not ethical to use actual like human children. They do testing on beagles, very relevant to what's been happening. But then she was able to get them to move away from that and to use like human tissue from postmortem like samples. And so, wherever she went, she was promoting non-animal methods. So it was really cool hearing her story. She's, working at a company where they do, I think, like, 3D cell culture.
Wow.
And so I forget your original question. I know it started with Maddie Krasno, but
I was just curious as to how it
all sorts of different,
whether there was, I mean, you basically answered it, whether there was attention to the fact that there are a lot of people who want to do science and don't want to do this.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought that panel was great. They even had a Q&A, and then I was like, oh, that person's vegan. Oh, that person's vegan.
Cool. That's cool.
They were really like, engrossed in this and sharing their personal stories. They also, the very first day, at the end of the day, they had a welcome party, and Melanie Kaplan was there talking about her, she read an excerpt from her book, Lab Dog. And wonderful. I know she was on the podcast last December, but she, talked about her dog, Hammy, who came from one of the 3 big beagle breeding and testing facilities in Vigo, which then closed down. And she tells a really beautiful story of reporting in her book, Lab Dog, where she investigated, where her dog came from. And yeah, it was really great meeting her as well.
Yes, I love that all of these people were exposed to these stories.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I have to shout out, I mean, they had 100% vegan food because it was hosted by PCRM, and the food was really good. The food was really good.
That's
I was
good.
I was in line the first night with people, and they had like crabless cakes, and we're going down the line putting stuff on our plates, and I guess there was some like non-vegans standing behind me, and someone was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's crabless cakes." And he was like, "I'm good." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, you want parts from animals, like dead animal body parts?" I
Good work,
didn't say
Neha.
that. I wish I did. I'm just not very confrontational. But he's like, "I think I'll press."
That would have been
And I
a
was like,
lot.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you are such a prime example of people using their talent and their skills and their interests to help animals. I mean, what you're doing is really, really fascinating and genuinely is creating change for animals. Like you and the other scientists there who were, on the right side of history when it comes to animals are the reason why I think people have hope in these fields. I know we have to let you go, but I want to give you an anecdote. And the reason I am is because you told me you like my sidetrack stories. And so I'm going to tell you that as you're sitting, even though Mariann doesn't, Mariann, you don't have to listen.
I kind of do have to
Yeah, you do have to listen. But so I was sitting here thinking how science was always my worst class. Like I don't have a scientific mind. It does not come natural to me. And I was trying to come up with like any science memories from growing up. And I realized that like the big one that came to me was that in 5th grade, they were dissecting. And I don't remember what kind of animal, but it was either a worm or a frog. And I was like, no way. I had this was the 80s. I had no idea if this was allowed or not. I know that now it is. I know that you can like opt out. And but at the time I was like, I'm not doing it, which was kind of a giant big deal for me and for like my class. So they were like, okay, and they let me go to the nurse's office and sit and whatever, color or something. And
how old were you that you were dissecting?
10.
You were coloring at the same age that you were
Right. I wasn't
dissecting
coloring.
frogs?
I don't know why I said. Well, I was an artist, so yeah, coloring probably. I probably was drawing something, or writing
Right.
morose
All
poetry.
right, drawing sounds.
Okay.
I'm picturing a 6-year-old.
No, I was like 10. But anyway, so then I was
early
like,
to
then
dissect.
there's this giant like black hole where I don't remember anything about science because I was like a performing artist kid and this and that. So then I go to a conservatory college for acting. Halfway through college, I transferred to a liberal arts school to continue pursuing my BFA in acting, but I hadn't taken any of the like core classes that you have to take because I was at a conservatory. So I just kept putting it off and putting it off. So I finished all of my coursework for my BFA, and I had an extra semester of school to do of just those core classes that most of the time incoming freshmen are doing. So I'm like 22 and suddenly I have to take science in order to graduate college. And I hadn't taken it in like a billion years. And the only science that my college offered that did not exploit animals was like, the study of rocks. So which I think is probably really interesting, but I was not interested at all. And I don't know what I did to pass, but I'm sure I passed by a hair. Like I'm sure I passed by like just they were like, just give it to her because she, Anyway, that's my anecdote. I just thought I'd share it with you. There's no big moral at the end of it, but I guess it's like, and now we're here, like in the same, in the same virtual room right now, like both fighting for the same cause, and we both came at it from very different places, but we had like this shared moment. For me, it was the moment with the choosing to not dissect right before we let you go. Neha, what was your aha moment? Like I'm not even necessarily talking about your go vegan story, but like the moment you realize that animals matter.
Oh my God. I never had an aha moment. I've been like that since I was a baby. I would like pick up ants and move them off the sidewalk and like just like feed the chipmunk in my backyard for an entire summer, like in elementary school. Like I was a big animal lover all throughout. And I had my first research experience after ninth grade. I took AP Bio and I loved it. I was like, biology is my thing. You know, I come from a family of engineers and I'm like, math, blah, blah, blah. Like, biology, it's so cool. How do bodies work, you know?
What a rebel. What a rebel.
What a rebel, I know, right? And so I like really fell in love with biology. And, you know, my dad, and I'm really privileged, my dad's a professor of engineering at Villanova University, which is here in the Philadelphia area. And, you know, he was able to talk to a colleague who studies biology. And I was able to do like a research internship that summer after ninth grade, which is like pretty early exposure when it comes to like science research. And that was, I think, like a little traumatic for me as well. Even though I learned a lot, but it was also a little traumatic because I was using cells from a mouse. And so I was working with a grad student who was like using like one cell type from them. And he basically, he was going to use the mice anyway. And then I was using some other cell type from the same mice. Mm-hmm. But I remember being like kind of like comfortable with that, but then like not really voicing it. And then one day I like saw the mouse in the cage before I think he had like run to the bathroom. He wasn't there, but I saw the mouse in the cage and I just like didn't know what to do. And I was like, should I just let it out? You know, like I had a moment where I was like, what do I do? I don't want this mouse to die. And I like kind of had a bit of like a meltdown without like not an external meltdown, an internal one. And I wrote myself a huge email about like, what am I doing with my life? This is like the summer before 10th grade. Okay. But I sent it to myself. So I can like go back in my emails and find it actually.
Wow. Oh my God. I'm getting chills. That's
yeah. And then yet I like went on to like, you know, major in biology and then like, and when I did research in college, it was, you know, in human cells. But then, you know, my PhD's in immunology, which is a heavily like mouse model field. And I'm surrounded by mouse work, and I was able to find a project in a lab where they use a lot of human systems. But yeah, I don't know why I stuck to it, because you think that would have turned me off enough to be like, I'm never going near this field again.
But that's the
I guess
thing.
I just really love science. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, like kind of, I know that my example was totally different than that. And I was 10, but I ate animals for another 8 years. Like it's important to remember that we have these moments of like, you know, checkpoints where we're checking our own selves, and the fact that you even wrote that to yourself, like, oh man, what a gift that little Neha gave you.
I know, little Neha.
I want to hug her. I just want to be like,
I like get teary when I see that. I want to go back and hug little Neha too. I have to say, I also had a dissection experience that I abstained from as well, and they made me do like a virtual thing instead. And I was like, why can't everyone do this?
Well, when I was a kid, virtual things didn't really exist. But but like that is really great to know. I mean, yeah, like if there's a virtual opportunity, why? Like, why not? Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. But before we end, I do want to just mention two things.
Sure.
One is that I just want to highlight PCRM. I think they really do amazing work. And one of the speakers was talking about how they talking about how they advocate at, the federal level, and they push for like Congress to support and back legislation for funding through agencies to implement programs. And one of the permanent FDA programs called iStand is in place because of PCRM, and they allocate like lots of funding for NAMs and reducing animal testing. And so they're really like a huge change maker. So I just wanted to really highlight that. I think PCRM is amazing. Another thing I just wanted to quickly mention is that I unfortunately wasn't able to attend this thing that they had, but it was a featured documentary screening. I think it was like the second screening of a brand new documentary by the director and producer Stephen Latham. I don't know how to pronounce. I'm sorry, Stephen Latham. But it's called The New Gold Standard. It's about cutting edge science that's replacing animal testing. I think it'll be out in the fall probably on PBS or somewhere. So just keep your eyes open for that. I'm sure it'll be really, really great. People really enjoyed it. So
thank you. Thanks for that heads up. I also have a few announcements. Is it okay if I do them now? Because I want to get them in before we close out.
I want you to
they are on a different topic.
I want you to get them in, but first I want to thank Neha Nataraj for these insights. And, I hope that you, as your career progresses and as these alternatives to animal testing progress as well, I hope that you come back and keep us posted, because you are a very special brain and a very special human, and we're really grateful that you're in the flock and that you're our friend. So thank you for spending the time with us today. Don't go anywhere, because you have to sit through these announcements and look interested. But I just
always interested. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was really great. I'm so happy to share. I spoke to some PCRM people. They were like, "Oh my God, send us the episode," because they were very excited. We're a lot of listeners at PCRM. So
amazing. We love them too. All right, Mariann, bring us on home.
Oh, my two announcements. One is also from a flock member, Daniel, and he mentioned that a recent issue of Current Affairs is completely devoted to animal issues. I have not yet read the articles, but they look fascinating. It's available online for free, and we'll put that link in the show notes. Lots of good articles by really good people. And the other is about our flock bonus for this week. We're really excited to offer flock members a reading by Sangu Iyer from her new book, Governing Bodies. It's a memoir about her own journey as well as her family's, and it's described in a recent interview in the LA Times, and which really emphasizes it's not all about animals, but animals are a very important part of Sangu's life and her family. So this is what an excerpt from the LA Times interview. In Governing Bodies, Iyer traces her family lineage of nonviolence, traveling to Burma, where her grandfather was so moved by hearing Gandhi speak of self-reliance as a form of resistance to colonial rule that he quit his stable job as an engineer for the British to live by Gandhi's moral precepts. He moved his family to the countryside, where they built a Spartan ashram as their home and planted lush groves of fruit trees. Iyer's father later immigrated to the United States and passed on to his daughter his reverence for animals and the natural world. After his unexpected death, Iyer considers how she can live by the principles of truth and nonviolence she has made her own. Wow. And Sangu, of course, is also an engineer, and wow. She's a beautiful, beautiful writer. She's written pieces for us as well. I think I've mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. Flock members.
That's phenomenal. That's so cool. Okay, Neha, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you listen to the bonus content? It's okay if the answer is no.
I always intend to.
That's fine.
I always intend to.
That's fine. Just intend,
doesn't happen.
That's okay. I'm always, we have a hard time tracking who listens because of the way the information is disseminated. It doesn't go to like a podcatcher analytics. So I was just curious. Yeah. That's fine. There's no wrong or right answer. I'm just saying, if you do want to start, this would be a good week to start. Mariann, continue.
Will do.
Okay.
Yes, it would be, because Sangu is amazing. She's a dear old friend. And I mean, she's not old, but we've known her a long time.
She's probably a little old now, because we're all a little old. Like, let's be real.
In addition to that, don't forget, Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays. The Hen Report comes out on Thursday. The long form interview on Fridays. This week's long form interview is the Animal Law podcast, and it's a mind blower. I have Wen Shang and Stefan Seitz and Chris Carraway talking about Wen's conviction in Sonoma County and the recent appellate court decision that reversed it in part, affirmed it in part, their plans to try to go to the Supreme Court of California. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Amazing.
So be there or be square. I said that the last time too. That's my new thing. Be there or be square. Don't forget, we're a podcast and we're on YouTube. Subscribe, hit like wherever you listen. Subscribe and hit like even where you don't listen. And we'll see you next time.